Hello and welcome. We are live here with Adam Hergenrother and Hallie Warner, and they are going to be our panelists for Behind Every Leader and the EAO Summit. So we're thrilled to have them both. I first came in contact with Hallie a while back when I just saw how enthused she was about her role and how passionate she was, and her and I went back and forth so many times. And then I had the pleasure of hearing about Adam through herglife.com. He actually spent time putting an incredible blog together, and I think the title was 5 Ways to Create a Strategic Partnership with Your Executive Assistant, and we're going to provide you with those links as well. And Hallie has also gone on to create her own blog called leadandassist.com. So first and foremost, thank you so much for getting the time to be on this podcast. We wanted to give some of our attendees a little insight as to what to expect at Behind Every Leader and EAO. So you are going to be attending the Washington, D.C. and the New York conference this year in 2017. So thrilled to have you both. And I'm going to pass it over to Adam and Hallie to give them a little bit of a background as to who they are. And then I'm going to run through some questions that we actually got from the attendees themselves that wanted to learn a little bit about who you are and what it took to build that strategic partnership and that symbiotic relationship as partners. So Adam, over to you.
Well, thank you so much for hosting us and for allowing us to be Behind Every Leader. We're really excited to be there and to share our passions that we have together for creating our strategic partnership, but mostly creating a business that everybody wants to be a part of, and that really stems from the two of us. And so we're excited to be able to share that in a real, vulnerable way so that people can see all the challenges, the successes, the failures, and the growth that we experience for it. So we're excited to be here for that.
Thank you. And Hallie, a little bit of background on you?
Sure, yeah. I'm the Chief of Staff at Hergenrother Enterprises, and I've been working with Adam for just over 6 years. So we have gone through a lot of ups and downs together over the years, and it's been exciting and challenging every step of the way.
The 6 years feels like a marriage of about 35, but it feels a lot, but it's awesome.
Well, it's something that we always talk about during any of our conferences or any of the workshops that we do, that having a pure symbiotic relationship between an EA and an executive is a marriage. It's a work marriage. Sometimes the EA knows more about the executive than the wife or the spouse does. So it's really important to get it right. So I'm really thrilled that you guys understand that. And don't give too much away on this podcast because we want people to kind of come and see it for themselves during the event. But I wanted just to find out, first of all, Adam, at what point in your career did you realize that you needed an assistant?
You know, it's interesting. When I first started in business, I realized that I actually had paralysis to actually doing a lot of things. So I loved being the individual who could create the vision and cast the vision and take on the huge, enormous risk that required in being an entrepreneur and a visionary. But when it actually came to doing something like either filling out paperwork or going and doing some minor errands that needed to get done in order to build an organization, it just wasn't happening, right? And so when you start realizing where the holes are in your business, and this was, for me, this was in the first 30 to 45 days into starting a real estate sales business, because I realized that things weren't getting done, and I was actually having upset clients because I was good at one thing, and I was really good at selling and getting them in there. But then the whole back end side of things wasn't happening. So at the time, I knew I needed somebody to help fill that role into doing all the things that I just didn't want to do. And so from there, we started off on getting an assistant. I think I actually went through like 4 or 5 assistants in that first year, and it was to people that were not quite as good as I was in terms of actual details, which is not saying much because I'm not good at all about that. So understanding that I needed somebody that was going to have my back, and understanding that I needed somebody to be able to do all these different things that I didn't want to do. So purely I could actually concentrate on the things that I enjoyed and 2 that I was good at. And I think that's part of the struggle with people is they don't see people as an investment or an asset. They see it as an expense, instead of being able to solidify the two and understanding that investing into a person is always going to give you the greatest return versus investing in anything else that you can, as long as it's the right person. And when you find the right person, which is why you got to write checks and break necks in order to keep them in your organization so that they can continue to grow with you.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that's something that is going to be a fascinating topic of discussion during the event and for years to come. And Hallie, what did you do before you joined forces with Adam? And also, what made you realize that he was a good fit for you?
Mm-hmm. So prior to joining Hergenrother Enterprises, I worked as an executive assistant at a really large public high school for about almost 2 years. And before that, I was in an entry-level assistant role at a nonprofit doing marketing and public relations. But it wasn't until I came here that I really started to understand what I was good at and what other career opportunities there were out there, and realizing that I could be challenged in the executive assistant role, that it was actually a career. More than anything else, I realized that it was a career, and all the things that I loved doing that I was really great at was a massive career opportunity if you were aligned with the right executive. When I was not aligned with the right executive, it was just a job, and I needed to get out of there fairly quickly.
Agreed. And Adam, you said that you went through a few assistants, say 4 or 5 before Hallie. What was it about Hallie that was the perfect fit for you?
You know, the single biggest thing that, especially at that time in my life, was being able to clear mental space, to have clarity in there to think through large, complex problems. So when I had things that needed to get done, how small, how big, if I was able to shuffle them off my desk onto somebody else's, and to literally be able to mentally check away from that, knowing with certainty that it was done better than I could do it, and most importantly, that it actually got done. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest things is when you have somebody where you have to recheck their work, or you have to check in to make sure that it's done. I mean, there's so many things that are coming at us every single day. If you have to worry about the items that you're having people do, it just takes up way too much brain space in order for you to be the leader that you need to be. So ultimately, in the very beginning, when I started seeing Hallie literally take things from me, right? It wasn't just things that I was asking her. It was things that I hadn't thought of that I needed help for, or she was preparing where Adam's going to be or what he's going to need, and things would just show up on my desk or home, and I was like, wow, this is incredible. And so when those things started happening, I'm like, that's when I really started understanding the value of having somebody who's there that's in line with you in a partnership. And then from there, you know, you build a tremendous amount of trust, and it grows from there. But it was those moments, those things, when I knew that I said, you know what, we got somebody who's amazing here.
And what would you say, Hallie, what would you say would a piece of advice that you would give to executive assistants that are maybe in a position where they're really hungry for a partnership like yourself and Adam have, but they're just not there yet? Any advice that you would give?
I think one of the easiest things that somebody can do and they can implement right away, no matter how new they are to the role or whether they've been in the role for 30 years but they're working with a new executive, is to know everything that they know. And by that I mean, if they're reading books, you need to make sure that you're reading the same books they are. If they're listening to podcasts, listen to the same podcast. If they have a favorite show on Netflix, watch that show. Make sure you're attending as many meetings as you can with their permission, listening on phone calls with their permission, so that you start to speak their language, you understand how they think, and then you can start answering, whether it's emails or whether it's just random questions on their behalf, and that is how you really become an asset to your executive, so that they're not always having to relay the information. You already have it.
It's always a delicate dance in the beginning, I think, when you're trying to figure each other out and finding out the boundaries and so on and so forth. So I think that's a great piece of advice, just to kind of be on their wavelength and just kind of know what they're thinking and really what their next steps are going to be, just like Adam said, just so that you are 10 steps ahead. Adam, what would you say was the biggest challenge you've had working with Hallie? Cover your ears.
I mean, and this is one of the things that I love about Hallie, is that, especially now, she pisses me off on a daily basis in a good way, because she calls me on my BS, and she also challenges. The reason why it bothers me is because she's challenging my thinking. And you need those people that are in your life. And I think over time, as your relationships build, look, every CEO, every executive who has somebody that's next to them in their life wants to have a Hallie in their life, right? They want to have somebody who's behind every leader that they can fully embrace and trust and be able to give to them through loyalty, through when things aren't going right, they can talk about them, with other employees that they need to talk about and they can't talk to anybody else about those things. They need to have somebody so they can bounce an idea off or even just hear it. So finding that person allows an organization to grow at a magnitude it wouldn't be able to unless you have that individual. And a lot of CEOs or executives don't understand that of how much mental space is taken up by not being able to dish those things out there or having somebody challenge your thinking instead of just having a yes person, right? And if every meeting you go into, if people are just agreeing with you, then what's the point of even having the meeting? So for our relationship, it's all about how does Hallie challenge me, right? And especially in the relationship that she's grown into now where she is truly just an extension of me. I mean, people go to her, they like her a lot better than they like me, right? I mean, they go to her for everything, and then she filters what needs to come to me so I can stay purposeful on the few things or the one thing that I'm actually good at.
Yeah, I love that. It's very true. And I'd love it if we could end it with, I already asked Hallie what advice she would give EAs. What would you give fellow executives and CEOs, chairmen that haven't quite got that partnership yet, that really could just tweak a few things in order to kind of to get there, to get where you guys are?
Well, I think first you got to make sure you have the right person. And then once you have the right person, you then invest into that person. And you start giving pieces of trust to them to see what they do with it. So you give them a little bit, and as you start to gain that trust, you then turn over your life to them, right? Because ultimately, as you build this over the next 90, 120 years to come, the more you give to them in life, actually it's a freeing feeling that you have knowing that somebody is going to be there behind you, supporting you no matter what's happening with it. So the advice that is it's tough to want to give up control. It's tough to want to give up your calendar. It's tough to want to give up your emails. It's tough to want to give up the aspect of things in your world. But here's the secret. Once you actually do that, you can then go out there and concentrate on the few things that's going to make the greatest impact for your clients, for your consumers, for your family, for yourself, and for ultimately your company. And I think when you can come from that attitude with it, you ultimately become an organization where people can also lead by your example by showing what you're doing, showing you're giving up control, so that it literally leaks down to everybody else within your company, so you're organically growing your organization to a place where everybody wants to be.
I think that's a huge point, and this year it's the first time that we're actually going to be featuring a whole audience of executives and their assistants. So I think that those little nuggets of advice are going to have a huge impact. So we can't wait to have you there on the BEL stage. Thank you so much for joining us. We're also going to provide the website to both of your blogs as well as all the links to attend the events that you're going to be at. So thank you so much for participating in today's podcast, and I can't wait to finally meet you two. It feels like I've already known Hallie inside out, the amount that we go back and forth. So thank you so much, Adam. Thank you, Hallie, and we'll see you on the BEL stage.
Thank you.